In a quiet land surrounded by thick forests and wide open fields stood a peaceful African village. Rows of small mud houses with thatched roofs stretched across the dusty ground, and smoke from cooking fires slowly rose into the morning sky. The village looked calm and beautiful, but behind this peaceful life there existed a powerful rule that everyone obeyed. Early each morning, the villagers filled the narrow paths between the mud houses. Women carried baskets and clay pots, men prepared their tools for the day's work, and children ran through the dusty streets laughing and playing. The village looked lively and full of energy as the people began another ordinary day. At the center of the village was a wide open space known as the village square. This was where the elders of the land gathered to discuss important matters. Beneath the shade of a large tree, they sat together, watching over the people and making decisions that guided the entire community. Standing not far from the village square was the king's palace. The palace was built from strong clay walls and decorated with wooden pillars and carvings that showed the history of the land. Though simple in appearance, it was the most important building in the entire village. Inside this palace lived the ruler of the village, King Obasi. He often sat proudly on his wooden throne while wearing his royal wrapper and beads that showed his authority. The villagers respected him deeply because he protected their traditions and ensured that the laws of the village were always obeyed. Among the many laws in the village, there was one rule that everyone followed without question. No one in the village was ever allowed to wear the color red. Because of this rule, every villager dressed only in dark clothing, especially dark wrappers and simple garments made from natural materials. Among the villagers lived a young woman named Amara. She was known throughout the community as a hard-working and kind young lady. Many people admired her because she always treated others with kindness and respect. Amara spent most of her time helping the people around her. She carried water for the elderly, shared food with those who needed help, and greeted everyone she met with a warm smile. Her kindness made her loved by many people in the village. Yet, despite her peaceful life, Amara often found herself thinking deeply about the strange rule that forbade the color red. Whenever she looked around and saw everyone wearing the same dark clothing, she wondered why such a rule existed. Sometimes Amara tried to ask the elders about the rule. She approached them politely and asked why the color red was forbidden in their land, but the elders always shook their heads and warned her never to question the ancient law. One bright morning, Amara picked up a woven basket and began walking along a narrow path leading away from the village. She was heading toward the nearby forest to gather firewood, just as many villagers often did during the day. The forest stood tall and quiet at the edge of the village. Massive trees stretched high into the sky, and thick shadows covered the ground beneath them. The air felt cool and mysterious as Amara stepped deeper between the trees. As she searched the ground for dry sticks and branches, something unusual suddenly caught her attention. Among the dull colors of the forest floor, she noticed a bright object shining between the trees. Curious, Amara walked closer and discovered a beautiful cloth hanging from a tree branch. The cloth moved slowly with the wind, glowing brightly in the sunlight. The cloth was a deep and powerful red, brighter than anything she had ever seen before. Against the green forest background, it looked almost like a burning flame. Amara carefully reached out and took the red cloth into her hands. She examined it closely, amazed by how beautiful and soft the fabric looked. After staring at it for a long moment, curiosity slowly overcame her fear. Amara gently wrapped the red cloth around her body and shoulders. As the cloth settled on her body, Amara stood quietly among the trees, feeling a strange sense of confidence and courage she had never felt before. With the red cloth now wrapped around her, Amara slowly began walking back toward the village path that led home. As she entered the path leading to the village, the first villagers who saw her immediately stopped in shock. They stared at the bright red cloth she was wearing. Women carrying clay pots froze in place, and children stopped their games as they looked at Amara in disbelief. Within moments, whispers began spreading from house to house as more villagers saw the forbidden color. Soon, a crowd began gathering in the village square, pointing and murmuring about what they were seeing. The village elders quickly stepped forward, their faces filled with anger and concern as they looked at the red cloth. Quickly, word reached the palace, and the king's guards appeared to clear a path through the growing crowd. King Obasi soon arrived from the palace, walking slowly into the village square to see what had happened. Amara now stood alone in the middle of the square, surrounded by villagers staring at her with fear and anger. The elders gathered together beside the king and began discussing what punishment should be given for breaking the sacred rule. After a long and serious discussion, the king raised his hand to silence the crowd. With a heavy voice, King Obasi declared that Amara had broken the ancient law of the land. Because of this, she was banished from the village and forbidden from ever returning. The villagers began shouting angrily and forced Amara to leave the village immediately. Heartbroken and frightened, Amara ran down the path leading back toward the dark forest. As night slowly fell over the village, the once lively streets became quiet and empty. But soon a strange wind began to move through the silent village paths. Some villagers claimed they saw a mysterious red shadow moving quietly between the houses. Others whispered that they heard footsteps coming from the edge of the forest during the night. Children began saying they saw glowing red eyes watching them from the darkness beyond the village. Even King Obasi began to feel uneasy, wondering if the village had made a terrible mistake. At the edge of the forest, beneath the tall trees, a red figure could sometimes be seen standing silently. It was Amara, no longer living as she once did. Her restless spirit wandered through the forest, still wrapped in the glowing red cloth. And from that day forward, the villagers believed that the spirit of the girl in red continued to watch the village from the shadows of the forest.